Never figured I'd turn into some kind of neighborhood rebel. But sometimes life just kinda shoves you that way, you know? Name's Brian, and for 15 years, I was a structural engineer. Residential developments were my thing. Figured I knew how to play by the rules. Then I moved into Sunnyside Estates, which turned out to be the stomping ground of the county's most notorious HOA president, this lady named Lori Barnes. Turns out, following the rules sometimes means fightin' the folks who say they're enforcing them. When I bought my corner lot about a year and a half back, the seller mentioned the HOA was particular about how things looked. That was like saying the ocean's a little wet, or Everest is kinda tall, if you catch my drift. My first run-in with Lori happened like 3 days after I moved in. I was still up to my eyeballs in boxes trying to figure out which blasted circuit break. "She's gonna look just like you," he kept telling Akona, all excited. And it wasn't just Ekani. Everyone in the village was wondering what Akona's baby would look like. Lots of folks figured she'd be even more beautiful than her mother. On the night Akona went into labor, the whole village gathered round the hut where she was giving birth. They were all waiting for her to bring her child into the world. The midwives, who were real experienced, were inside Akona's house, helping out with the delivery. As things got going, they encouraged Akona with kind words and gentle touches. Hours went by, and finally, the moment came. With one last big push, Akona had her baby. The midwife quickly grabbed the kid to clean her up and check her out, but then everything went quiet in the room. Everyone was shocked and kinda scared. Akona's baby had a head that was just massive. Way too big for a kid. Ekene rushed in, ready to see his beautiful daughter, but he froze when he saw that big-headed baby lying there. "What is this thing you gave birth to, woman?" he snapped, real angry. Then he stormed out of the room. Akona was just as shocked and confused, seeing how big her baby's head was. She was even scared to hold her. But then the baby let out her first cry, and Akona's heart just melted. She picked her up, kissed her, held her close, and named her Nkiru. Years went by, and as Nkiru got older, her head just kept getting bigger. Everyone in the village, kids and adults alike, made fun of her all the time. They'd call her Nkiru, the calabash head, pointing and laughing whenever she walked by. Of all the villagers who teased Nkiru, Ibuka, who was the prince of the village, seemed to enjoy it the most. Whenever he was bored, he'd send his guards to drag Nkiru to the palace just to make fun of her. He'd joke about her head, tell her to balance stuff on it, and he and his buddies would laugh their heads off. All that teasing really hurt Akona deep down. She'd cry at night, just wishing her daughter's head was normal like everyone else's in the village. Akona would always try to calm her down, telling her to ignore the insults and jokes from the villagers and the prince. But her father, he couldn't stand the sight of Nkiru. He didn't want anything to do with her or even call her his daughter. Whenever the villagers and Prince Ibuka mocked and laughed at Nkiru, she'd run off into the village forest, looking for some comfort among the trees and plants. That forest became her safe place, a spot where she could get away from all the mean words and find a little peace. She'd spend hours wandering around, checking out the beautiful nature and collecting different herbs and plants. Over time, being in the forest so much, Nkiru started learning a lot about herbal medicine and natural remedies from those plants. She noticed how some plants had a soothing smell, while others seemed to help heal injuries. Real curious and wanting to learn more, she started messing around with the herbs she found. She'd crush leaves, make teas, and mix up potions, carefully writing down what they did. She figured out that some plants could ease pain, bring down a fever, and heal up wounds. Some could even knock you right out. She was really interested in all this and kept making potions with leaves, hoping that one day she'd whip up something that would shrink the size of her head. One day, the villagers were having a festival, and everyone gathered in the main square, enjoying the music, food, and games. Nkiru was there too, trying to have a good time, even though she knew she'd probably get teased. Sure enough, the prince saw her and decided to make everyone laugh at her expense. He climbed up onto a stage in the middle of the square and shouted out loud, "Ladies and gentlemen, I got a special announcement. Today, we're going to have a contest to see who can balance the most apples on their head." Everyone turned to look, wondering what was going on. The prince kept talking, "But there's only one person who can win this contest. Let's get Nkiru up here. She's got a calabash head. She can for sure balance the most apples." The crowd just burst out laughing, and Nkiru felt herself shaking with embarrassment. She wanted to run away, but she just stood there, looking down at the ground. The prince, loving all the laughter, handed her a basket of apples. "Come on, Nkiru," he said, all mocking. "Show us how many you can balance." "Please stop," Nkiru said quietly. Her voice all shaky with sadness. The prince just laughed again. "Oh, don't be so serious, Nkiru. We're just having a little fun." With trembling hands, Nkiru took the basket. She carefully put one apple on her head, then another. The villagers were watching, whispering and giggling. When she tried to balance the third apple, it fell, and the crowd just erupted in laughter. The prince was laughing the loudest, pointing right at her. "See, even with that big head, she can't balance more than 2 apples." Nkiru just burst into tears. She quickly grabbed the apples that had fallen and ran away, while the prince and the villagers kept laughing behind her. She kept running until she hit the edge of the village, then kept going into the forest. Finally, she slowed down and dropped to her knees by the last tree, crying and trying to catch her breath. After wiping away her tears, she heard someone crying nearby. It startled her. She looked around and saw the prince lying on the ground just a few feet away. He was hurt, with a deep cut on his face and bruises on his arm. Nkiru hesitated for a second about helping him, but her good nature took over. She hurried over to him and knelt down. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice shaking. The prince opened his eyes and tried to sit up, gasping in pain. "I was attacked by bandits," he said, sounding scared. "They took all my stuff and left me here." Nkiru quickly looked at his injuries. "You really need some help," she said softly. "Wait here. I'll be right back." She ran and grabbed a few leaves in the forest, then hurried back to the prince. She crushed the leaves in her hands and made a paste out of them. Gently, she put it on the cuts on his face and arms, and the bleeding stopped. The prince stopped groaning in pain and looked up at Nkiru, surprised. "The pain's gone," he said. "Are you a herbalist?" Nkiru smiled a little and said, "I know a few things about leaves." "Thank you," he said. "My name's Shaike. If you hadn't been here, I probably would have bled to death." Nkiru managed a small smile. "I'm Nkiru. Let's get you up." She helped him stand up, and together they walked back to the village. When Nkiru brought the injured Shaike home, her father was furious. He met them at the door, his face all twisted in anger. "You useless girl, what are you thinking?" he snapped. "Not only do you run off into the forest wasting your days, but now you bring a stranger into my home? With that calabash head of yours, you should know better than to bring strangers into my house." Nkiru flinched at her father's mean words, her eyes filling up with tears. Before she could say anything, her mother Akana stepped forward and put a gentle hand on her husband's arm. "Please, my husband, let her explain," Akona said softly. "She found this man injured and alone. She only wants to help." "Fine," he said, sounding annoyed. "But he's not staying inside my house. He can stay in the barn where we keep the yams. Only for 1 week, that's it." Nkiru nodded gratefully, and helped Sheik to the barn, making sure he was comfortable. She brought him food and water, and Sheik thanked her over and over, really touched by her kindness. Over the week, Sheik slowly started to feel better. Nkiru visited him every day, bringing him herbal remedies and taking care of his wounds. With all of Nkiru's care, Sheik started to get stronger. The wound healed up, but it left a big scar on his face, making him look pretty rough. As Sheik's week in the barn came to an end, he moved out of Nkiru's place and found a little spot to stay in the ville. He also got a job at a pigsty, where he took care of the pigs. Sheik became Nkiru's only friend, someone who she really was, and not just the girl with the big head. As the days turned into weeks, the villagers started noticing the friendship between Nkiru and Sheik. They saw them together a lot, walking through the village or gathering herbs in the forest. The villagers, even Prince Ibuka, kept on making fun of Nkiru even more. They'd whisper behind her back and mock her for being friends with a guy who was not only ugly, with a nasty scar on his face, but also worked in a pigsty for a living. One day, Nkiru and Sheik were walking through the village when they overheard some villagers talking. "Look at them," one woman sneered. "Nkiru with her calabash head and that scarred-up guy from the pigsty. They're a real pair, aren't they?" Another man laughed and added, "Yeah, I guess she thinks her knowledge of herbs will magically fix that ugly mark on his face and make him look the way she wants." The prince, who was standing nearby, couldn't help but join in. He said, "Who else is she gonna be with? She's finally found her match." He walked up to Nkiru and Sheik and said, "Nkiru, why do you always have to do things the hard way? Out of all the guys in the village, you pick this one?" He laughed. "Oh wait, I forgot. He's probably the only one who can be with you because you two go together perfectly." He kept mocking and laughing, and Nkiru felt her heart break at his mean words. She just turned to Sheik, who looked equally upset, and said, "Let's go." As they walked away, Sheik sighed and said, "I'm sorry, Nkiru. Maybe it's better if we don't spend so much time together." "No, please don't listen to them," Nkiru said. "I don't care what they say. None of them wanted to be friends with me or even talk to me until you came along. Why are they so worried about who I'm friends with now?" Sheik smiled. "Thank you," he said. "Your friendship means more to me than anything. I don't know how I would have made it in this village if it wasn't for you." "Well, we're here for each other," Nkiru said, smiling. "One day, we'll both find partners who'll fall in love with us and accept us just the way we are." One day, a really bad sickness hit the village. The water was messed up, and a lot of the villagers got sick, including the king. The village healer, who usually could fix anything, couldn't find a cure. Panic spread through the village as people started dying. In desperation, the villagers, even the king, turned to Nkiru for help. "No way, I don't care," Nkiru said angrily when her mother told her the king needed her help. "Let them all get sick. Why should I help them? Have they forgotten I'm the same Nkiru they used to insult and call names because of my head?" "Nkiru, my daughter, don't say that," her mother pleaded. "You can't fight evil with evil. You have a good heart. Don't let anyone take that away from you. Use the gifts you have to do good. Maybe this is how God wants to turn things around for you." Nkiru sighed, really touched by her mother's kind words. "Okay, Mama," she said. "If it wasn't for you..." "I wouldn't even think about it." "That's my girl," her mother said. "Every good deed gets rewarded. You know so much about herbs. Go find a cure." Nkiru nodded, determined to help. She and her mother worked hard searching the forest for the best herbs and getting the remedies ready. Nikiro took care of the sick, staying by their side day and night. Slowly but surely, the villagers started to get better. Even the king got his strength back, all thanks to Nkiru's herbal medicine. Before long, things were back to normal in the village. One hot afternoon, Nkiru was asleep in her room when her mother suddenly rushed in to wake her up. "Nkiru, Nkiru," she said, tapping her excitedly. "Wake up! Someone's here to see you." "Who?" Nkiru asked, still half asleep. "Come and see," her mother said, running out, all happy. Nkiru was still sleepy, but she was curious about what could make her mother so excited. Slowly, she walked out of the hut and was surprised to see a bunch of villagers gathered around, including Sheik. They all looked surprised and like they were waiting for something big to happen. Prince Ibuko was there too. By the corner of her hut, there were piles of gifts, food, fancy clothes, jewelry, and drinks. As Nkiru stepped out of her hut, still confused, Prince Ibuka walked up to her. Slowly, he got down on one knee, held out a ring, and said, "Marry me." Everyone was shocked. Nkiru just stood there, looking at Prince Ibuka, kneeling there with the ring, with no expression on her face. The whole village was waiting for her answer. Without saying a word, Nkiru slowly turned away from the prince and walked towards Shike, who was standing among the crowd. Shike had been watching everything with a sad look, feeling his heart sink. Now standing right in front of Shike, Nkiru looked him in the eyes and asked calmly, "When are you going to tell me how you feel about me? Or are you just going to keep it hidden?" Shike's eyes went wide with surprise. "So, you knew how I felt about you?" he said, his voice shaking. "I was scared you'd turn me down because I don't have anything to offer, especially with this ugly scar on my face." Nkiru smiled softly. "You should have said something instead." "Dina just assuming," she said. "You're not the only one with scars, you know." Without wasting another second, Shike got down on one knee and took Nkiru's hand. "Nkiru, you're the most amazing person I've ever met. Your kindness, strength, smarts, and beauty are like nothing else. I've loved you ever since you helped me in the forest. Will you be with me, not just as a friend, but as my partner for life?" Nkiru's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, Shike, I will," she said without hesitating. With pure joy, Shike stood up and kissed her, sealing their love. The villagers were stunned, but Shike and Nkiru didn't care. Hand in hand, they walked away from the crowd, leaving everyone behind. Prince Ibuka, still kneeling there, was filled with anger and embarrassment. Nobody had ever turned him down like that, especially not in public. He stood up, fuming, not believing what had just happened, as Nkiru and Shike walked away. The villagers started whispering to each other. Some were wondering how Nkiru could be so bold as to turn down a prince, the kind of guy every woman wanted, for a poor guy like Shike, who fed pigs and had a big scar on his face. News of what happened spread through the village like wildfire. Everyone had something to say about it. When Nkiru's father heard that she'd rejected the prince, he was furious. "It's like you want bad things for yourself," he said the second she got home that evening. "You turned down the prince for that pig man who has nothing to offer you. With that calabash head of yours, you should be happy the prince even wants you. If I didn't love and trust your mother so much, I'd wonder if you were really my daughter. A real daughter of mine who has my blood knows a good thing when she sees it. Then disown me," Nkiru said. "If you're red of me being your daughter, and you're just going to insult me every day and regret that I exist, just tell me I'm not your kid anymore, and I'll leave." Then she walked away from her father, even though she had nowhere to go if she left. She was just fed up with all the constant insults. That night, Akona, Nkiru's mother, came to her room to have a heart-to-heart with her daughter, who was still upset about her father's harsh words. "You shouldn't be angry with your father," Akona said. "He's just worried about you. But he hates me because I don't look the way he wants me to look, or as beautiful as you are," Nkiru said. "He can say whatever he wants about how I look, but he shouldn't force me to marry someone like Prince Ibuka, a guy who makes fun of me every chance he gets." Akona looked at her daughter carefully and asked, "But how much do you really know about Sheik?" "I know you. Met him in the forest after he was attacked by those bandits, but you still don't know much about him or where he comes from." "I've asked him a bunch of times, Mama, but he doesn't remember," Nkiru said. "He lost his memories after the bandits beat him up and left him there." Akona nodded and said, "But what if he's lying to you?" Nkiru was surprised by her mother's words. She'd never thought about that. Her mother continued, "He seems like a good man, yes. And it seems like he truly loves you, and you love him back. But you shouldn't marry a man you don't even know. You're not even sure if his real name is Shaiki. I'm not saying you have to marry Prince Ibuka. You're the one who has to make that decision, not us. But please, take your time to know more about him. It doesn't matter if he's the only one who likes you the way you are. To me, you're still priceless, no matter what you low." Okay, like. After listening to her mother's advice, Nkiru decided to visit Shike early the next morning to ask him more about himself again. Maybe, just maybe, if she asked him again, he'd remember something. The very next morning, Nkiru was getting close to Shike's place when she saw some palace guards going inside, armed with machetes and knives. A few seconds later, the guards dragged Shike out and took him away. Nkiru ran over to them, demanding to know what was happening, but the guards just said it was the prince's orders and took Shike away. Nkiru rushed to the palace, her heart pounding with fear and anger. When she got there, she found Prince Ibuka in the middle of a party with his friends, laughing and drinking like nothing was wrong. Without thinking, she stormed in and asked him, "Why did you send your guards to arrest Shike? He hasn't done anything wrong. You're doing this, Beck. And I turned you down, aren't you?" The room went silent, and everyone turned to look at Nkiru. Prince Ibuka looked up at her, pretending to be surprised. "Nkiru, you shouldn't be so full of yourself," he said. "Arresting Shaik has nothing to do with you or the fact that you turned me down." Nkiru, not believing him, said, "Then why, Prince? Why did you have him arrested?" "Well," he said, "we've had reports of a traitor in the village, someone who's plotting against the kingdom, especially since the village water was messed up. Shaik is the only newcomer here. Nobody knows him, and nobody knows where he comes from. It's just a precaution." Nkiru's anger flared. "Precaution? Shaik hasn't done anything wrong. He's helped the people in this village. He's kind, loyal, and he's never shown any sign of betrayal. That's just an excuse, isn't it?" Prince Ibuka's eyes flashed with anger, but he quickly hid it. "I don't need to justify my actions to you, Kiru," he said coldly. "As the prince of this kingdom, it's my duty to protect it. Shaik's background is suspicious. Until we know more about him, he'll stay in the palace's custody. And besides," he added, his voice softening, "when did you start caring about him so much?" Kiru's voice trembled with emotion. "This isn't right, and you know it. You're doing this because I chose Shaik over you." Prince Ibuka's friends exchanged knowing glances. Sensing the tension in the room, the prince stood up, angry. "Enough, Nkiru," he snapped. "You won't accuse me of being petty in my own palace. Shaik will be questioned, and if he's innocent, he'll be released. But until then, stay out of this." Nkiru's heart ached at the thought of Shaik being locked up for something he didn't do. But she knew there was no point in arguing with the prince anymore. "You may have the power now, Prince Ibuka," she said, "but the truth will come out. And when it does, I hope you'll be judged for your actions." "We'll see about that," Prince Ibuka said. Now get out of here with that big head of yours. For 4 days, Nikiru wasn't herself. She couldn't go to the forest to search for herbs, which was usually her favorite thing to do, and she couldn't even eat. Her mother tried to comfort her, telling her things would be all right, but Nikiru knew things were bad. The thought of Shike suffering and being treated unfairly because of her haunted her. After thinking about it for days, she decided to go to the palace and accept Prince Ibuka's proposal, hoping he would release Shike. She figured it was better for her to be in a loveless marriage than to have an innocent man in jail for a crime he didn't commit. The next morning, Nikiru went to the palace, her heart heavy with sadness. As she got closer to the entrance, she paused, hearing voices from inside. Quietly, she moved closer and overheard Prince Ibuka talking to one of his friends. "I'm only proposing to Nkiru because my father insisted," the prince said. "He thinks her knowledge of herbs makes her valuable and can help our kingdom, but let me tell you, nothing could make me marry such an ugly girl with a big head like a calabash." Nkiru's breath caught in her throat, her heart pounding as she listened. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Prince Ibuka continued, "And that guy Shike? I hate him. I hate him because that ugly girl chose him over me, a crown prince. Can you believe it? The embarrassment. How dare she? I plan to get rid of him as soon as possible. I've told a guy to get me some poison to put in his food. It'll be clean, so it won't come back to me." Nkiru was shocked and angry. She'd always known Prince Ibuka's intentions weren't good, but hearing him talk about Shike like that was almost too much to bear. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that she had to be careful now more than ever. Pushing down her emotions, Nkiru composed herself and walked into the palace, pretending she hadn't heard anything. Prince Ibuka looked up in surprise when he saw her. "Nkiru," he said, hiding his anger with a fake smile. "What brings you here so early?" Right away, Nkiru knelt down, her eyes lowered as she spoke. "My prince, I've come to tell you that I've changed my mind about your proposal. I accept it. I'll be your wife." The prince's eyes widened in surprise, clearly not expecting this. "What made you change your mind?" he asked. Nkiru kept her voice steady, her face blank. "I've been thinking for days, my prince. You're the crown prince, and you can give me a better life than Shike ever could. Look at me. No noble man would want me. I've decided to put my feelings aside and make a practical choice." Prince Ibuka stared at her for a moment, as if trying to see if she was being honest. Finally, he smiled. "I knew you'd get over your foolishness and see reason," he said. "You've made the right choice." Nikiru forced a small smile, even though her heart was heavy with the knowledge of what she'd just heard. "Thank you, my prince," she said softly. "But before we go any further, I have one request." "What is it?" the prince asked. "Please," Nikiru said, her voice trembling slightly. "Grant me one last chance to see Shike. Let me say goodbye to him. I promise I won't ask for anything else." Prince Ibuka paused for a moment. He didn't like the idea of her seeing Shike, especially now that they'd agreed to marry. "Very well," he said. "Although I would have loved for you to reject him in front of the whole village, so everyone could watch. That would have been a pleasant sight." He paused, but only for a brief moment. "You can see him." Nkiru nodded and bowed her head. "Thank you, my prince." As she stood to leave, Nkiru's mind was racing. She knew she had to act fast to save Shike. When Nkiru got home, she got to work right away, making potions. She didn't sleep all night because she didn't have much time. The potion she was making was a difficult one, and it could even cost Shike his life if she wasn't careful. The potion would make Shike go into a deep sleep for 24 hours, and it would also slow down his heartbeat almost to nothing. It was a dangerous potion, and she also had a plan for how to get him back. Nkiru prayed that everything would go as planned, and that she wouldn't end up killing a man she loved. She figured it was better to be in control of his life than to have Ibuka kill him. The next morning, just like Prince Ibuka promised, Nkiru was allowed to see Shike. When she entered the palace prison, Shike was so happy to see her that he hugged her tightly and kissed her. Without wasting any time, Nkiru handed Shike the potion. She told him to trust her and just drink it. She told him that it would make him look like he was dead, but that she would revive him before 24 hours were up. Without question, Shike took the potion from Nkiru and told her that he trusted her with his life. He drank the whole thing without even thinking. Immediately after Shike drank the potion, his heartbeat stopped. He fell to the floor as if he were dead. Nkiru left the palace right away and ran back home so no one would suspect her. A few minutes later, the guard who was supposed to give Shike the poisoned food, as instructed by Prince Ibuka, arrived. But when he got there, he saw Shike's lifeless body. The guard immediately went to tell the prince about it, and the prince didn't even seem worried. Really? He's actually dead? Well, he made things easier for us. Go throw his body away in the forest, Prince Ibuka ordered, and the guards carried Shike's lifeless body to a spot deep in the forest. As they were about to dump him, one of the guards noticed a mark on Shike's neck. It wasn't a scar, but a stamp, and he knew what it was. "What's that? What are you looking at? Do you know that mark?" the other guards asked him. But the guard who saw the stamp just shook his head and said, "No, it's nothing, let's go." The guards dumped the body and went back to the village. The guard who had seen the stamp made an excuse to leave the others and rushed off. After the guards had dumped Shike in the forest, Nkiru, who had been following them, came out of hiding and ran to Shike. She opened his mouth and started pouring in the potion that was supposed to restart his heart. But after she gave him the potion, nothing happened. Shike didn't wake up. Nkiru's heart skipped a beat, and she burst into tears, scared that she'd killed the man she loved while trying to save him. She started hitting his chest, calling out his name. After several tries, Shike sneezed and woke up. Nkiru hugged him tightly, crying tears of joy, and Shike hugged her back. They sat there in the forest, holding each other while Nkiru told him everything that had happened and why she had given him the potion. Shike was sad to hear it all. "My love," Shike said, "I think it's best if we go to another village and start over. Nobody wants us here except your mother. Since you did all this to save me, Prince Ibuka will never stop hunting us, and I'm afraid he'll hurt you too." Nkiru thought about what Shike said. Running away seemed like a good idea, but it also meant giving up. And besides, they hadn't done anything wrong for Prince Ibuka to hunt them. He was just being selfish, and she couldn't just leave her mother like that. Nkiru turned to Shike and said, "No, we won't run away. We haven't done anything wrong, so we shouldn't live in hiding. Rest today. Tomorrow, we'll both go back to the village and confront Prince Ibuka," Nkiru said, with determination. Shike sighed, knowing that the woman he loved was the kind who would never run from danger. "Fine, if you say so," he replied and kissed her forehead. Together, they spent the night in the forest without any problems. The next morning, they walked back to the village, even more determined than they were the night before. Back in the village, the prince was furious. He'd gone to Nkiru's house to bring her to the palace and announce their engagement, but her parents told him she'd been gone since yesterday. Prince Ibuka figured that she'd tricked him again, and he was even angrier. He gathered the whole village to make an announcement. He told everyone that anyone who saw Nkiru should bring her to the palace for immediate punishment. Just then, Nkiru and Shike walked in. Prince Ibuka was furious when he saw Shike. "How are you alive?" he said angrily. "I thought you were dead." "Well, that's because I stopped your plan to kill him, you evil man," Nkiru snapped. Right after Nkiru said that, Prince Ibuka rushed at her to slap her, but Shike stopped him and grabbed his hand. "Don't you dare touch her with your filthy hands," Shike said, enraged. Prince Ibuka was shocked that Shike was talking back to him so boldly. Uka's father, the king, said. The royal emperor didn't say anything. Instead, he looked around, and suddenly his eyes landed on Shike with a surprised but compassionate look. The emperor quickly went to Shike and pulled him up from the ground. He touched the back of his neck and saw the stamp, then pulled him closer and embraced him. "My son." Everyone was shocked. "Shike, my son, you're alive," the emperor said, with tears in his eyes. "I heard you were attacked and killed." Shike was surprised, too. He looked at the old man for a few moments, and then said, "Papa, is that you?" "Yes, it's me," the emperor said. Shike looked at the emperor closely and then burst into tears. "Papa," he said again, and they hugged each other. "It's okay, my son," the emperor said. "When a guard came yesterday and told me that you were in this kingdom, but that he dumped your body, I had to come and see. For myself. But I'm so happy to see you're alive. I almost wasn't, but thanks to this beautiful lady, the love of my life was saved," Shike said, pulling Nikiru close to him. The emperor embraced Nikiru immediately. "Oh, my daughter, thank you so much for saving my son," the emperor said, and then turned back to Shike and asked, "Since you've been alive all this time, why didn't you come home? Your mother and I have been mourning your death for months." "I'm sorry, Papa," Shike said. "I couldn't remember anything. I just remembered when I saw your face. When we went to the executive meeting that day, I was attacked. The bandits hit me hard on the head. They thought I was dead, but I just forgot everything. I almost didn't make it," Shike continued. "But it was Nikiru, my love, who saved me that day." "Oh, my daughter," the emperor said, embracing Nikiru again. "May the gods bless Sisu," the emperor said, showering her with praise. All this time, Prince Ibuka, his father, and the whole village couldn't believe what they were seeing. That Shike was the son of the Aluya emperor, the well-known emperor who people respected because he was humble, but never showed off. Just then, Prince Ibuka went closer to the emperor and tried to act friendly with Shike. "Oh, your supreme majesty, we didn't know that your son had been living among us for months. He's been a good friend of ours," Prince Ibuka said, pretending. "Oh, shut up," the emperor said. "I've heard how you've mistreated my son. I heard you ordered him to be poisoned. You heartless man. I call a meeting with the other kings from the other kingdoms and make sure you and your father are removed from power. Someone as heartless as you shouldn't be ruling a kingdom," the emperor said. Prince Ibuka and his father, started begging, but the emperor ignored them and left with Shike and Enkiru. Enkiru's mother was so happy that God had blessed her daughter with a good man who would turn out to be the best of all. On the other hand, Enkiru's father was ashamed of himself for treating her and Shike so badly. He apologized to them, and they forgave him. Shike and Enkiru had a beautiful wedding and invited everyone, even the villagers who had insulted her. Their story was still shocking to many, and the people who had insulted her couldn't believe that Enkiru, Calabash Head, had not only married a prince, but the future royal emperor who would be ruling 7 kingdoms.